Everyone, Vincenzo Cal here with VCalla Productions. Today I'm sitting here with Dave Smith, MPP for Peterborough, Kawartha, and Parliamentary Assistant to Ontario's Minister of Tourism, Culture and Sport. Thanks, Dave, for your time, and welcome to Let's Discuss Politics.
Oh, thanks, Vincenzo. I'm very happy to be here.
Well, it's so great to have you here, and let's get started today. So our first segment is called Dave's Story, where we'll talk a bit about who you are and your political history. So first off, tell me a bit about yourself, your story, and how you got your start in politics.
So I'm 53. I chose not to get involved in politics on the elected side until after my children were finished high school. I look around at some of my colleagues, and I'm not sure how they do it when they have young families. I was fairly active in my kids' lives. With my son in particular, I was involved with minor hockey with him. I coached his team for a number of years. I was involved in the executive of minor hockey. Just tried to give back to the community through a number of different things. And I had a few people as I was going through life, I'll say, who suggested that perhaps I should get involved in politics. I had volunteered on a number of committees for the city of Peterborough. I had been volunteer with a number of different initiatives, and it seemed like it was the logical step for at least the logical step according to a number of different people for me. Each of us have reasons why we decide to get involved in politics. So my reason why is probably different than most. When a number of years ago, I'll say, one of my family members was extremely ill. We weren't sure for a number of months whether or not they were going to survive. And I think that I owe a debt to the taxpayer of Ontario that I'll never be able to repay, because that family member is alive today. And if I had lived in Detroit or New York, the first question that the hospital would have asked me is, "Are you paying by Visa or MasterCard, Mr. Smith?" When I saw the amount of debt that Ontario was incurring when we had good economic times and the amount of interest that we were paying, I was afraid that we were going to get to a point where a director would go to hospitals or doctors and say, use the most cost-effective treatment and not necessarily the most effective treatment. It's been more than 20 years now for my family that we've had this success. And I firmly believe that all families in Ontario need to have that same healthcare success. That when you are sick, you go to the hospital, we treat you, and you do not get a bill. And we give you the best treatment that is available to you, not the most cost-effective treatment. We should never be making a decision on whether or not we can afford to pay for it. What we should be making the decisions on are whether or not this is the most effective treatment for someone.
And healthcare is definitely a massive thing that your government has been working on right now and sort of looking at and trying to see, because coming out of a pandemic, it's been very challenging for your government and all governments through healthcare. And my next question, you sort of already answered it on why you decided to run, but maybe I'll frame it in a different way. Why did you decide back in 2018 to run with the PC party with Doug Ford as leader? That was very much a change election. Why did you decide to run for the PC party and Doug Ford in that election?
So the impetus that made me decide to throw my name in the hat is I have 3 kids, and I had always said to them as they were growing up, if you can do more, do more. If you can help someone, then do it. It's our responsibility to make a difference. And we were watching, I had mentioned my son earlier, we were watching the news when he was in grade 11. And Donna Skelly, ironically, was the anchor who was on. I can't recall exactly what the issue was, but my son turned to me and said, "You've always told us that if we could make a difference, then do it. You could make a difference. Why aren't you in politics?" And I took a step back and looked at that, and I thought, if I don't at least try, then my kids will think I have been lying to them their entire life. And that's why I decided to put my name in the hat, started the nomination process in 2017. And I have been successful so far.
And before we go on to the next segment about serving, I want to talk about something that happened in this election. In this election, there was another Dave Smith that ran in Scarborough, for the PC party, and he won. And well, he goes by David Smith, I believe, and you go by Dave Smith. What's that like? What's that like having another Dave Smith, another guy with the same name as you in your party caucus?
It's kind of funny because all throughout my life, most people refer to me as David. And as we were looking at it, when I decided to put my name in the hat, people suggested I should go by Dave because it's not as formal and it's what some people would refer to me as. So for basically 40 years, most people referred to me as David. And then as I got into politics, they started calling me Dave. With David Smith from Scarborough, almost his entire life, people referred to him as Dave. And he chose to use David during the election to differentiate himself from me. So our joke, and I've got a really, really good relationship with Mike Schreiner from the Green Party, but our joke is that we have more Dave Smiths than we have Green Party members in the legislature. Mike's been pretty good about it.
Well, it's just those little funny little things that always add a little laughter and life to politics. We have so many things going on in politics and in Ontario, and it's nice to laugh a bit about, oh, look, there's two Dave Smiths in our party. And I guess it's not as much as when Stephen Crawford, your colleague, I remember seeing his video where there was another Stephen Crawford running against him in
Running
that
against him.
election.
Yeah.
But yeah,
We
it's
have
those fun little moments.
actually have five Smiths in our caucus between myself, the other Dave Smith, obviously, Laura Smith, Graydon Smith, and Todd Smith. So we refer to it as the Smitty Committee.
Super fun. So let's go into the next segment now, talking about your role as an elected official in this segment, which is called Serving as an Elected Official. So first off, what is your favorite part about serving Peterborough Kawartha as their MPP?
There's a lot of things that come into my office that you have an opportunity to make a positive impact on. And I'll talk about one in particular. I think that when I'm done politics, this is probably where I will hang my hat on the most satisfying thing for me. We have a group, an organization called Shared Dreams, and it's five disabled individuals who are in their late 30s, early 40s. Their parents are 60s and 70s, and they were starting to look for succession planning. How would they make sure that their kids, their young adults, were going to be looked after when they were no longer around? We worked with the Mount Community Center. There was a very specific, accessible apartment that was built specifically for them. And we found funding through MCCSS through a pilot program. They are living independently in the community. They have PSW support and other supports right there where they live, but they are able to be part of the community. And the way that it's been done, it's actually less expensive for the province than if they were to be placed in a group home. But it was a completely different approach. It had never been done in Ontario before. And we were able to design this pilot project that is replicable across the province. And they have been living independently now in this situation for not quite 2 years. It's a better quality of life for them. They're integrated in as part of the community, but it also provides peace of mind for their family that when their parents do pass on, they know that they have set up something that is a legacy that will allow these gentlemen to fulfill their life as well and not be placed into a group home, not be seen as secondary or second class. They're right there in the community and they can live an independent life. And I think because it is something that can be replicated and because it is something that no one has ever done, that to me is so far probably the greatest accomplishment that I would see. We have given independence to 5 families.
So I want to talk a bit about now your parliamentary role as minister, parliamentary assistant to Minister of Tourism, Culture and Sport, and you've also served in a number of other parliamentary assistant roles over the years. So what have been some of your favorite achievements as a parliamentary assistant over the past years?
So I was parliamentary assistant to Northern Development, Mines, Natural Resources, Forestry, and Indigenous Affairs for about 2 years. Prior to that, I was parliamentary assistant to Northern Development, Mines, Energy, and Indigenous affairs. So the bulk of my work has been done as the PA there. It's been about 6 weeks that I have been in tourism, culture, and sport. I really can't say very much about what I've done in TCS because I haven't been there for very long. But on the Northern Development side, on the mining side and the Indigenous affairs side, I've spent a fair bit of time up north, seeing some of the challenges that northern communities face. I have been into some of the remote and fly-in communities for First Nations to see some of the challenges that they deal with there, and it's been quite an eye opener for me, I'll say. On the mining side, I have learned a great deal about it, and I think that because of the advancements that we have made on the critical mineral strategy, I really think that we've positioned Ontario in a very good place moving forward to be the leader in the green economy, the green revolution. You cannot build electric vehicles, solar panels, wind turbines without having critical minerals or rare earth elements. And Ontario has an abundance of them. They have been untapped. And I've been very blessed to have been part of the group who was working on untapping those resources and finding an environmentally friendly and ethical way of mining those products and of processing those. I'll touch on one in particular, one thing in particular, and that's a smelting facility for processing critical minerals. There isn't one in Ontario yet. We're working on one. There are four of them in the world, one in Louisiana, one in China, one in South Africa, and one in India. The proposal for the one in Ontario will be 900 times cleaner than the cleanest one, which is in Louisiana. It'll be 2,800 times cleaner than the one in China. When you look at that, if we're going to have a green revolution and we're going to be going down the path of electric vehicles and enhancing solar panels, yes, those are all green technologies, but if you can do the processing in a more ethical and a more green way, that just adds on to it. The carbon atom doesn't care where it's born. We just care that we reduce the number of carbon atoms that go into the atmosphere. And I think that the more that we can do in Ontario with our green energy, with our ethical work laws, with our safety record that we have in Ontario, the better it is for the entire world.
Well, definitely, and it's so important. I know this is a focus that your government has put on and some of the work you've been doing and I'm not going to go too much into it because I only have a bit of time to talk. I don't want to talk too long, but just something important to note about Ontario and our vast resources, our vast land. I was scrolling through Instagram today and I saw something interesting talk about Northern Ontario and how large Northern Ontario is, that if it was its own like territory or its own country or something like that, it would still be, I think, the 36th largest country in the world. And that
Yeah.
is striking to me, that we have such this vast place with all these very important resources that will help us in our journey to green revolution and help the world, hopefully help those down in the States and around the world to create a future where it's green energy, and it's starting right here in Ontario and up in Northern Ontario, and that's something to be excited about.
So to put it in perspective, if you were to take the countries of Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and Norway, we still have room left over in Ontario to fit all of those.
Which is super interesting, and yeah, I'm gonna leave it there because that just is something to marvel about. But so this segment is called The World of Politics Around Us, where we'll talk a bit about this world of politics that surrounds us. So first off, who is or who was another politician that inspires you as an MPP?
There's a couple of them. As a kid growing up, I'm 53. The first premier that I ever heard of was Bill Davis. And I actually have a scroll from Bill Davis, a certificate from Bill Davis, when I won an Ontario championship in softball as a little kid. When you hear the stories of how he acted in Ontario, he's just one of those guys. I think that you could take a lot of time and emulate him. In terms of federal politicians, it's hard not to like Brian Mulroney, what he did to bring the Conservative Party back. But it's also hard not to like Joe Clark. the media painted him a certain way. I've had the opportunity to have met him. He is not what he was painted in the media, or what I recall him being painted as in the media when I was younger. And obviously, our current Premier Doug Ford, I can't speak highly enough of. He just has a heart of gold. He is a fantastic man who I don't think has been treated fairly by a lot of media outlets.
Well, all very, very important players in Canadian politics. A while ago, a few weeks ago now, I guess, at the time of this release, I had your colleague Minister Mulroney come on the show, and we talked about her father and his achievements, and all these different people in our Canadian political spectrum, and sort of looking at the achievements that they have made is really important to look at, whether you agree with them or not. It's sort of like looking at the accomplishments, like Joe Clark. He served for about a year, but the accomplishment he did, like the importance of him actually winning, that's something to look at, and sort of looking at the different things that happened throughout political history and pulling the lessons away from it is just really cool to look at. So finally, now I want to talk about issues that you are looking at now. So what do you think is an issue that needs to be focused on more, that you'd like to focus on more going forward?
I think everything comes down to a really simple concept, and that is money. Um, you have to have a strong economy. You have to have people who are in positions where they're earning good wages. They have the ability to spend money. Because if you don't have a strong economy, then you have nothing left. The amount of government has no money of its own. We don't make any money. The only money the government has is what it takes from you. So you have to find the balance then. How much do you tax someone? Are you better off to have less in income tax and have more in retail sales tax? Because if people have money in their pocket to spend, they tend to spend it. And when they spend it on disposable income type things, then that also kickstarts some of the economy. And it becomes a, a spiral upward where, although you're reducing the amount of income tax that you're bringing in, you're increasing the amount of tax that you're bringing in because more people are working and more people are buying things. And it's finding that balance. That I think is one of the biggest challenges that any government has, because you have to guess at how much revenue you're going to have coming in. You have to guess then at what you should be investing in that's going to see a tax return for you. When I first got involved in politics, there were a couple of key things that I was looking to do. First off, I wanted to find a way to reduce the cost of electricity. I don't think a government should ever do something based on ideology. They should always be looking at how are they improving the lives of the people that they represent. The reality is the cost of electricity in 2003 was the lowest in North America here in Ontario. And by 2018, it was the highest in North America. That increases the cost of everything. For us, we have to be looking at how do we make sure that our healthcare is the best that it can be? How do we make sure that we have a strong education system? And how do we make sure that the money that we're putting into those things are being spent in the most appropriate way? Right now in this budget, we will spend $14 billion in interest on our debt. That has to be put under control. Interest rates are on the rise. That's just going to increase. So we need to find a way to get back to a slight surplus on the budget so that we can start reducing our debt load to reduce the amount of money that we're paying in interest. All of that money could be spent helping people in Ontario, and instead it's wasted by going off as interest.
That's all I have for today. Thanks, Dave, so much for joining me. It was great having you here.
Thank you very much for having me, Vincenzo. I really appreciate it.
Well, it was so great having you. And if you like this interview, make sure to go check out the other interview here on YouTube with Dave on Let's Dis for Top 10. If you're watching this, the date of the premiere coming out on Friday. So Let's Discuss Politics is a VCalla production. Until the next video, I'm Vincenzo Calla, signing out.